We have all witnessed how crazy the world has gotten in the last 2 weeks, to the global push to censor fictional content, to seeing sweeping age verification across the entire internet that is invading people's privacy. It's been very important to talk about all these different subjects, to itch.io, to Steam, to Collective Shout, and everything in between. And it's one of the big reasons why I have dedicated a week and a half of my content to just focusing on these subject matters, because it's very important to spread awareness and talk about everything going on. And I've seen a lot of support and a lot of people basically saying, I'm very happy you're talking about this, Chibi. You need to continue doing it, because obviously a lot of people were completely unaware of it until I started speaking out about it. And I've been very passionate about the subject matter for way over a year at this point. I've been talking about payment processors and stuff literally back in 2024, 2023. And so it is something that I've always talked about. And with everything that's been going on, it's been very important to discuss the content going on in the last 2 weeks. But with that being said, obviously, I want to dedicate this video to kind of talking about something a little bit brighter, talking about something that isn't necessarily about censorship, and talking about something that is more or less a recommendation. Today, I'm going to be recommending a series that I recently discovered when I was looking for new series to read. Yes, despite everything going on as of late in the news and on the internet, I still have found time to be able to either keep up with anime, read manga, and even start new series on webtoon. And the series I want to discuss today is Bloodbreaker. It is a relatively new series, as you can see. It only has 4 chapters out. However, there is more chapters if you decide to use the app. I think there's up to 10 chapters right now, but if you're reading it on desktop, there's only 4 chapters. But anyways, we need to get into the concept of why I'm recommending this series. So discovering this series started off as usual. I was browsing Webtoon's site, looking for new things to read, looking at newly released stuff, looking at what was most popular by category, and eventually I discovered, Bloodbreaker. I decided to sit down and read it because obviously it was relatively new, and I just had a few minutes to kill. I had 10 to 15 minutes to kill, so I was like, you know what, let's see if this is, good or not. I like the art style, I like the way the red and the black look, so I was just like, this is probably going to be really cool. But basically, I was just browsing, and I was about to catch up with other series like, Tears on a Withered Flower, or potentially even talk about X-Love Review, which I've covered in the past, very good stuff. Also, the fact that Unordinary is here, let me pull this up real quick. Oh, crap. Oh, crap. There's a new chapter of Unordinary. Okay, as you can see, it's been on break for a while, actually. Holy crap. It's been on break for over a year. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna have to read this after this video. Anyways, I decided to sit down and actually discuss Bloodbreaker. And so let's talk about what this is about. So, chapter 1 pretty much introduces our main character here that is a bleacher. And he is someone that has been kind of, not gifted, but more or less cursed with an ability, and he is someone that is able to use abilities, special abilities that normal humans can't. It obviously follows a typical formula you see in, let's say, shonen series. However, what separates this series a little bit from the others is the fact that the powers in general from the story come from an essence of evil itself. That all the abilities that our characters have come from this entity that is obviously not good, and there is nothing good about these abilities. Even if you try to use them for good, or you're trying to use them to help people, these abilities do come from the source that is just straight up pure evil. But the series also elaborates on the fact that if you continue to use these abilities and you continue to just, be in this situation, eventually you will be overcome by madness. And basically the main enemies that you see within the story are individuals like our main character that was once a bleacher, even a regular human that got corrupted by this acid blood rain and turned them into monsters. And eventually the people that are bleachers that have abilities will be driven by violence. They will be driven by the actual wanting to hurt people, to actually initiate harm against others, and eventually they'll just go crazy. And so the main premise of the story is that there is a dark ending for all our characters, despite obviously them trying to fight for survival in this world and try to piece out a home, in this very rough apocalyptic environment. Eventually, they're going to succumb to the acid blood rain. Either they're going to turn into monsters, or they're just going to go insane. And the very premise is very dark, it's very depressing, and obviously, I like these type of stories. I like seeing stories of, post-apocalyptic, or stories where humanity is backed up against the wall. It's why I kind of started Attack on Titan many, many years ago, is because of that premise. And I think a lot of people can agree. We like seeing, humanity pushed against the brink and having to fight back against maybe an unknown monster entity that appears appears out of nowhere. Now, as for what the story is trying to develop towards or where it's going, as you can see, it's relatively new. There's only 4 chapters to read right here instead of the 10 on the actual app, on Webtoon's app. But I've read all the chapters, and I have gotten to see kind of what's going on. And more or less the premise right now is that these, you have this giant, like, red cloud. You can even see it in the background here. You have this giant, like, red cloud that is covering this segment of the world, and it continuously rains. It will have this acid blood rain that comes down. And if it even touches you, like a drop of it touches you, you will turn into a monster or become mindless, which is obviously very scary. And around this entire area, this contaminated zone, it's been walled off. Like, people are walled off inside this contaminated zone, and it honestly reminds me a lot of Code Vein. I don't know how many have played Code Vein, but if you've ever played the story of Code Vein, it kind of reminds me of that. It really does. It feels very similar to just, like, the whole situation with blood and everything, and, like, just how they're, like, encased or whatever, like, in the city. It feels like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is that their situation is not good. And apparently outside the the contaminated zone or the containment zone, there is peace. People can live a-okay. But the question is why did it just happen here? Was it a science experiment gone wrong? Was it, aliens? Was it some form of supernatural entity? We don't really know. However, in the story so far, from what I've read, there is themes of, like, seraphim, Nephilim, and all that, and apostles, very much inspired, like, terms inspired by demons and angels. And obviously, as I already stated, the abilities come straight up from, like, an evil presence. They're not good abilities. Even if they try to use them for good, the abilities are, their origin point comes from evil itself. So I think, in general, it's really cool. I like what the series is doing. I wonder if it's a little bit Berserk inspired as well, with using, like, apostles and stuff like that. But, it's got a really unique premise. Like I said, the artwork and stuff looks really cool. I like what it's showcased so far. It has potential to be a good story. And also, we got a character that's basically Gojo. Like, yeah, this guy, by the way, is pretty much Gojo from JJK. Obviously, I don't think he is as arrogant and as full of himself as Gojo was in JJK, but he is confirmed to be the strongest. It's literally stated he is the strongest Bleacher, and just his entire introduction reminds you heavily of Gojo. So definitely the writer and artist of this, if they were not inspired by, let's say, Berserk, I think that they were definitely inspired by JJK to an extent. It's just 100%, you know for a fact they are, by not just the design of the character, but just the premise around, like, how it's presented and everything else in between with the story themes. So yeah, I kind of wanted to give a shout out, honestly, to Bloodbreaker that I discovered. I highly recommend reading this series. If you're looking for something to read, relatively short, give it a shot. If you want some other little recommendations on the side, I would recommend Tears on a Withered Flower or X-Love Review. Hell, I would even recommend Unordinary here, which I need to read the new chapter and all that. As soon as I finish this video, I'm going straight to read this. But, anyways, yeah, that's my recommendation. I kind of wanted to mix it up today because obviously I've been talking a lot about, like, censorship and stuff, and so I wanted to kind of break up the monotony and, discuss something like this. Speaking of which, if you're interested in this series, a link is in the description. You can check it out. You can read the series for yourself. It's entirely free and all that. You don't have to pay or anything like that. It's just entirely free. The link is in the description. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm gonna, try to cover if there's anything else that crazy comes out for censorship-related news, I will cover it, but also I will probably be making a video on Takapi since tomorrow is the last episode of Takapi. But okay, be safe, stay healthy, I love you guys, Chibi out.